Bonsoir, dear friends, and welcome to JCB Live. We hope you're as good as I am because we're going to have an amazing, happy hour. We're going to be with a charismatic, charming, amazing hairstyle, Joe Riddell himself, anchor, radio personality, podcaster, broadcaster. He's done it all. The expert on travel, the experts on wine and food, and many more. So, dear friends, please welcome the charismatic, seductive. He's taken, he's married, but there's still a chance. He loves life. Joe Riddell. Yes, Joe.
Thank you, John Charles. Thank you very much for having me on your... I'm just joking.
I love your lips.
Could you imagine?
No, I was not talking about those.
You are horrible. Thank you.
Hey, to a beautiful world.
Monde.
Beau Monde. So Joel is as well bilingual with the French language.
Well, I'm bilingual adjacent.
Born in Canada.
I am. I'm born in Ontario, Canada. Spent a lot of time in Niagara, which is the Niagara wine growing region. Sometimes drinking, sometimes getting myself in trouble, but most often just enjoying myself. And I went to school in London, Canada, and worked in Stratford. And the whole experience of growing up there was just this great foundation for the rest of my life. I mean, not knowing what was going to come next and just saying, wow, I've got this great family and all of these great connections and experience on the farm. And well, now I'm in farm country in the Napa Valley.
Here we go. So you were born and raised in a farm, on a farm?
I was born and raised on a hippie farm.
Ooh.
So my parents just...
Peace and love.
You have no idea. My parents decided that we needed to move from the city and get some rural living. And so without having any experience, we moved to this farm, and it had a barn. So we got chickens and ducks and geese and a pony and a horse and a bunch of other animals. And the chickens turned out to be half roosters, which they had no idea. And the ducks dug up all the tulips, and, as they do. But and we had a turkey that died of old age, Pierre.
So how did it feel to just be transported into nature?
I think that being out there was great because there is this feeling that some parents, I think, have nowadays that they have to be in much more control of their children. And I don't mean that like a controlling person. I mean making sure they see them at all times.
Totally agree.
And I respect that totally. But where I grew up, it was really like if the one light post in the entire town went on, that's when you went home, kind of. Like we would just run free, and sometimes we'd fall down and break something, and then somebody would help us, but there wasn't this feeling.
That's right.
And this is just, it's a different way, I think. And
how does it make you different as Joel Riddell today?
I think
thanks to this amazing education that, dear friends, I've had the same in a small village of Burgundy, similar to you. Our parents would say, be home around 7.
Whenever.
And we would go home with friends, and it would be all cool.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah. And we would bring other friends home with us too.
That's
and
it.
There was no worry. And again, I absolutely respect what parents go through these days, and I understand it. But we just had that way of being. And I think that it gave me a trusting feeling, but it also gave me the ability to be a little more self-deprecating. Like, my friends would tease me and make fun of me. We would tease one another. I didn't have mom and dad to complain to. And just kind of got to stick up for yourself and find out who you are. And
how many siblings did you have?
There are 5 of us.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I am the second youngest.
I see.
But they're all...
And do you think we're going to go back to that kind of more free, in some ways community living because it seems that where we are right now in California, people have moved a lot back to Napa, to Sonoma, left San Francisco.
Mendocino, yeah. I think it's definitely possible. I've met some people who live in Mendocino County who have a very interesting attitude about life.
Yeah.
I love it. It's sometimes ways similar, in some ways different to my own. Sometimes we get too caught up with things and stuff, and it's something that we all live with in our lives. Like, I am not going to pretend that I'm not, but I don't know. I think it's really great to be able to rely upon one another. And I think these days we are, in fact, relying upon one another more than we did before. Cooking for each other,
Yes.
making sure that your neighbor, who you may not have spoken with before, you're like, oh, they're a little older than I am. Do you have toilet paper? I mean, it's a random question to ask. No, but literally, I asked my neighbor. I was like,
How many sheets can I give you?
I was like, hey, I'm gonna go to Costco and do you want a value pack? Like, I could kick in $20 toward the cause. Like, life is good. It's okay.
That's right.
And thankfully, people have said yes in some instances, and others have said that's very sweet of you. But have you seen Exploradora down the street?
Yeah.
She has her little cart. Check in with her. Let's make sure she's okay. And that's
So you think this whole thing has brought us closer together?
Yes, I think it's driven us insane as well, and I respect all of the parents and children, and it's just the on and on. But I think that has been the ability to check in with one another a little bit more, feeling more socially responsible toward one another, and even those people who may not be your best and closest, you're like, maybe I'll email such and such or call them because I know they were having difficulties, or just in case.
And in that sense, to come back to your childhood, how you're an amazing personality. Needless to say, could we not notice that?
It's very
and
sweet to say.
you're phenomenal on TV, radio, podcast, and all of that. Did that come from your childhood as being able to express yourself in a way that was not confined by your parents and all that?
My dad said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a loudspeaker. Yeah. He gave me a pin that said Yaki Dada. I had a little dinosaur on it, and the dinosaur was talking, and I'm a bit chatty.
But you're a great listener at the same time.
I'm the quiet one in the family.
Really?
Maybe.
Well, I've met your mom. Now I've met the dynamo of the family.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing. Yeah, she's spectacular. But I think that what they did around us modeled my behavior in the future. So, for example, my mother went to Nicaragua to help out there when there were major political issues, and when she returned, she had no clothes with her because she gave everything away. We visited Cuba as children, and when we left, we returned to Canada with nothing.
That's amazing.
Because my parents said, there are young women who are working, and my sister was a young woman at the time, and so all of her, bras, etc. My mom's like, we'll buy you new ones.
Yeah.
Like, we're much better off than some of these other people are, but even though they all love each other and they're all happy, they can't get certain things. And so nowadays, when somebody asks me, will you host this charity event?
Yes.
And this is one of the things that I'm very fortunate to do.
I'm so proud of how much you raise each time.
Thank you.
It's such a talent.
It's a great time, and people who are in that community, they want to give, as we all know from the Sonoma auctions, the Napa auctions, and the smaller auctions that are school and local and history museums. Everybody wants to give, but you have to be able to finesse them out of it a little bit more, give them what they want.
Yes.
And sometimes it's just about being smart about what is available. So just negotiating that in advance, not getting people what they need, but just a little all right, nobody's going to want to go to X, but everybody wants to go to Y. So let's focus on that and see if we can bring the tourism organization into it and bring ABC7 or iHeartMedia or one of the other media companies. Let's give them value because we're receiving value from these community members to help out those in need.
That's fantastic.
That all came from my parents.
Yeah.
But
it's amazing, those trips. And many, not many, I don't want to make it as a simple thing to do, but I've heard that a lot in Canada. It's a great thing to do as a family, where you go and help in Central America or Cuba and so forth. Even in Europe, I didn't hear as much of that to that magnitude. And are you still doing that down there as well today?
I'm not, because the culture has changed a lot and there isn't the need for it in that particular region, of course. But my parents are still very involved in a lot of different organizations, working to pull landmines out of countries that had been landmined during the Second World War, being community members. My mother is on the board of the Canadian Mental Health Association. She works to bring to light mental health issues, much like the Staglins do here in the Napa Valley. There's a commitment, and you give what you can, and more oftentimes.
And what are your key philanthropical focus yourself?
I worked with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society for a number of years, and they were really important.
Yeah.
The San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus is very important, and I've been working with them as of late. I have an affinity for Alliance for AIDS, which is an AIDS-related charity, which is very good.
Still very important because AIDS is still going.
It is still going, and sometimes the focus needs to be on services like a Project Open Hand, making sure those who can't leave the house have meals delivered to them, but not only have meals delivered to them, but have somebody show up and see them. That's it. I mentioned Dora the Explorer. We called Meals on Wheels for this very sweet woman who's about 1,000 years old, and she could afford her own life, but she needed to be checked in on a regular basis. And Meals on Wheels did that for her, and it was good because somebody would come 3 days a week, I think it was, and be a part of her life. And she hasn't fallen over or whatever. I also got her a little life alert, so that helps.
But people need as well friends to talk to, as you just said.
Yeah, and it's
so those are your three big organizations as well.
Yeah, but
you're involved as well a lot in farming and back to from the farm to the table.
CUESA is a very good example. We did CUESA put together a CSA farm box program, and it was specifically dedicated to those employees in restaurants who had lost their jobs, and
that's very cool.
It was a really important thing, and so they were raising money. They were raising money for the CSA boxes to give to these individuals, but also helping the farmers because they were buying from these CUESA the sustainable, I'm talking ahead of myself, Center for Urban Outreach.
Yeah, it's a complicated word. But
isn't that funny? Here I am I'm like, oh my God, CUESA, but it's the Center for Sustainable Education about Agriculture.
Which we're huge believers in Napa Valley and Sonoma. This is something we big supporters of in many ways through Napa Green and sustainable farming and all that. We believe. But doing those packages were great.
Well, and it was fun for me because I could use the contacts that I have in my current and former media outlets. So I was able to call ABC7, I called KGO Radio, iHeartMedia, and Channel 2 that I've never worked for, but I know people who worked there, and just said, hey, this is what they're doing. Do you have any feel-good moments coming up? Because they're not just supplying food to people in San Francisco, it's a Bay Area thing, and this is who they are, even though I can't say their name for the life of me. And it's so important. And then Channel 2 went out of their way, did a whole day of commercial after commercial supporting them. They raised lots of money. Hangar One Distillery in Alameda, they're a fantastic distiller. Megan Schoenfeld saw it. She was like, I want to be a part of it. And so they donated money. And all of it goes to the community,
it takes a fabulous dynamo like you.
Or a nosy Parker who's really pushy. Sometimes you need a little pushiness, right?
Talking about that, what made you so this one represents Beau, Monde, a beautiful world in French, as you know. You love traveling, you love exploring the world. And we'll come back to this, but talking about that specifically, what made you cross the border and come to the United States? Because it's a great immigrant story. We love always to say, you're from Canada, I'm from France, and we're here together.
But this is a wonderful nation.
Yeah.
And even though every nation has its issues, I think it's from afar, I always saw the excitement, the ability to say good things, to bring people together. That's what this country is about, to support one another, and to be able to say, I'm working hard, and this is what I want to accomplish. Will you help me, or can you partner with me? These are all good things that don't necessarily exist in other cultures.
That's right.
In the same way. And so when I graduated university, I have a degree in art history and I have a degree in education. There weren't any jobs in Canada. This is a long story about politics and unions. But my mother got me a job basically in New Zealand. So I was going to go to New Zealand.
Coming close home.
She
would only see you once a year. How could she do that?
But I got as far as San Francisco, and I had met the late Mr. Burns through my family in Stratford, Canada, which is a beautiful
So tell us who Mr. Burns is, because what a personality, dear friends.
Mr. Burns was a broadcaster. Yeah. He was a fantastic human being, a bon vivant. He was on the radio, and he raised money for huge causes. And really developed alongside the Julia Child, the Robert Mondavis, the people who were into food, wine, and travel, and the American palate. And he had a radio show in New York, he had a radio show in Boston, a national radio show. And then when I moved to San Francisco, I actually was visiting him here because he was working at KGO, which is a local radio station. Yeah. And I was his assistant in the beginning and then his producer. And I learned
And then you took over the show?
Kind of, yeah. Well, I filled in a bunch of times. And my boss at the time, Jack Swanson, the first time, I talked about as quickly as I'm talking now, and
But you're very clear. You articulate so well.
Well, Jack had said, you're a really great guy, but I'm not sure you're cut out for this. And so the next time I had to fill in at the last minute, I listened to the pauses, and I listened for the pauses, and I took the advice of Mr. Burns, who said, this is not about you. And right now it's about me because Jean-Charles is asking questions. But the reality is, a good radio interview is not about the interviewer. It's about the interviewee. Mm-hmm. And nobody cares how much I know. It's all about getting them to give you the information.
I see.
And I think that was such an important lesson because listening is key. And we had these great moments over time where people would open up accidentally and not say anything terribly scandalous, but make comments you're like, really? Okay. But
let's dive deeper into this.
Absolutely. And
I know you would be very good at that.
Well,
and you are very good at that.
Thank you.
So you join him, and
I did.
And I think it's a great story to share because you learned from him, but then you became the master at it. And
thank you.
And there's a great opportunity, obviously, on those topics.
Totally.
In Northern California and beyond.
And I was able to produce programs from France, thank you, from London.
Maybe three times.
I'm just listening for the sound of my side. No.
Baccarat in this instance.
Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Baccarat. Yes, so we had been able to go around the world with that program, but I also produced a political program for him. And I did that show on iHeartMedia with my colleague Corey, and it was the Corey and Joel show, and we did political topics.
That's right.
Which was so interesting and juicy for me because whether it was an election issue or
you would have a lot of fun right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you have to be respectful of people, but at the same time, you have to be willing to give your opinion and why. And if you don't back up what you believe,
that's it.
Yeah, or you have to say, this opinion might sound really vapid, and I don't have anything to back it up, but A, B, and C, and then people are like, okay, well, at least he's honest, right?
Yes.
But that, for me, was an opportunity to get involved in local issues and national issues and meet interesting people, the mayor and more mayors and Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Frank and Barney Frank. Sorry, not Bernie Frank. See, my mind sometimes all those people.
Yeah, but this is great. So you think of doing more radio?
Yes, absolutely.
You like podcasts as well.
I like podcasts.
So tell us about your podcast.
Well, it's very similar to radio in that it's a shorter format though.
Yeah.
10-minute here, you bring your equipment, you get to know somebody.
Yes.
It's a little less going currently, but there's a big future in it as well that I'm working toward. But I also really love taking a show on the road.
That's right.
And I've interviewed you
many times.
Yeah, many times, but from Copia, and we had this great time, and it was the Festival del Sole, Festival Napa Valley, music, people, like all of these things together, and you get to connect those dots and say, wait, you're in this business, but you really love this business. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting in some random movie theater with Augustin and Valeria Huneeus drinking way too much wine and watching a movie. I'm like, how is this happening? Insert a fantastic winemaker from Napa Sonoma beyond here because they're people.
Yeah.
And that's part of what I hope we get to impart. You're like, yes, there's a big name over the door, but the reality is that person they're farming the dirt.
Yes.
And you get these funny stories about pot growing on the mountain above St. Helena and which famous winemaker may or may not have been called by the whatever. But like those, or great artists and art collectors.
You like investigating in stories as well, doing the research?
I do.
You feel at heart a journalist too?
I think we have to appreciate what we're talking about.
Yes.
We have to understand it. I have a lot of really smart colleagues who sometimes read prompters, which is which
Yes.
is important because it's a skill that I don't particularly have because I'm always going off topic. But I think that having the background is important, and it's exciting, it's delicious.
That's right.
And you're like, where is this from? And then you find out that, well, lots of the, not all of them, but lots of the vinifera in New Zealand is grown on Wente clone stock. I'm like, oh my God, I've met Carl Wente. Like, this is so random. But I mean, it wasn't his vines, it was his family's vines, but those,
Still,
the
exactly.
international participation.
So where have you seen food and wine evolve? Because that's one of your favorite topics.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's go a little bit in this world of food specifically that is really so close to your heart. Where do you see food today versus yesterday, and where do you think it's going?
Yesterday, I saw food as being a little more complicated than it needed to be, perhaps. That was, there was that time in this world, and it wasn't that long ago that
That's
happened.
right.
And then there was a bit of a time where food became really, the word would be precious. And I think you have to respect what's on the plate, but also know that it's also food. And with wine, it's like the expression, relax, it's only grape juice. I mean, it's spectacular grape juice, but we have to pull it in and say, where is it from? What's the terroir? And when you eat, people will say, why is it when I go to Italy and I drink Chianti and I eat this food in Tuscany and it's all together? I'm like, because the wine was grown in the same dirt as the vegetables, and the farmers know each other, and sure, they may throw pitchforks at each other sometimes, but they do love each other.
The sense of place, the sense of proximity.
Which is what we have here in the Napa Valley.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have dinner at Bistro Gentil, or when you have dinner at Red in here in Yountville, or we have some gorgeous meal at the French Laundry, you know that Connie Green, who is one of the purveyors, is the person who forages for these mushrooms.
That's right.
And you know that some of these, the petit oiseaux, the little birds are grown or raised at, and they're all here in some parts of the Napa Valley or Lake County, Sonoma, and they're together. And this is where the fruit is grown to create these beautiful wines, or at least the wines that were produced here.
Yes.
And that's the sort of the marriage of the future on the way. And I think that's
an exciting future. That's the future I sign up for.
Thank you. I think so. Yes. And
you think so?
I do. I believe so, because I believe that now that we are cooking more at home, and even if we're bringing things home and putting them together, because there are these great restaurant meals that chefs have put together, or just bringing away takeaway, you're being really mindful and thoughtful, and you say, oh, Aquarello, I have this gorgeous meal from this fabulous restaurant in Sacramento Street in San Francisco.
We love it too.
We love it. It's so good. But you bring it home and you plate it, and even the act of plating it's an act of love, but it's also an act of, wow, Suzette Gresham and her team worked very hard on this.
Yeah.
And you're not just sitting in a restaurant with lots of other people being in this glorious atmosphere. You're at home and you're saying, this is something that has worked so well together.
You make me salivate here.
It's so good.
We're going to go there.
It's so good.
Your husband is an amazing chef as well. I remember the last party I came to your house. Insane.
Thank you.
24 guests around the dining room table, and it was a cassoulet.
He made Boeuf Bourguignon.
Boeuf Bourguignon, forgive me.
He made Julia Child.
That time was Julia Child Boeuf Bourguignon.
Yes, definitely. He was so excited.
That night was insane. And I thought, I didn't eat for 2 days later because it was so incredible. I went 3 times for
Thank you so much.
But now, do you see that really happening? Obviously, we've left 7 months more or less of home confinement, which is, many of us call it 5-star confinement, because we cook well, we enjoy good food. What do you think has happened to American realization now? Do you think, as a Canadian, you spend a lot of time at the dinner table with your siblings?
Absolutely. It was imperative every morning, every afternoon. My dad made us breakfast every morning. I'm slamming the table. I can't believe how passionate I am.
Yeah.
Hot breakfast.
Yes.
Before we left the house. And it's cold in Canada in the wintertime. And there I am with my little mohawk running out the door, hair still wet and freezing, and the bus driver is honking. He's like,
mohawk.
oh yeah.
It's good. Do you color it sometimes too?
I was a very colorful child. Yes, a very colorful child. But then we were full.
Yes.
We went to school with a full belly, and we were very, very fortunate.
Yes.
And not everybody grew up like that, but we had that.
Yes.
And then we would come home and we would have to, fix the table and all this.
Sit down at dinner and have discussions.
Absolutely.
So you think, from an observant as well, I mean, you're American as well as Canadian, so you're part of the culture very much here. Do you feel now we back to the dinner table, we back to home cooking. Do you think it's going to stay for a long time?
I'd like to say that, and I think that each of us and those people who are listening, we each have our own outlook. So
Yes.
you have 2 young children and
Yes.
you have a home life, and that's wonderful, and you can share together. I have friends who are single and they're doing a lot of cooking at home, and they're like, I'm ready to go crazy.
Yeah.
And we have outdoor dinner parties with them, just a few at a time, being very, very careful.
But you're very big at receiving at home yourself.
Yes,
you've always have.
We're very big. We're very big on. We even got an outdoor dining table so that
Great.
with the crystal and everything we
Of
could do,
course.
because I love that feeling. of
We've seen
coming together.
pictures of Joel Riddell, Instagram and Facebook, dear friends. You're going to watch him. He's amazing.
It's true. I judged the lamb jam, which is the American Lamb Board, several years in a row, and this year we didn't do the lamb jam. So each of the judges got a ground lamb, and we did our own lamb burgers. And so that was one of the things I got to do, was this like lamb cook-off burger, whatever. And I'm like, I don't need to win or a prize. This is all about playing along, right? Like we're
That's
not with home chefs or with which I am, but with restaurant chefs and home chefs who really work on those contests, they get a big prize. But I was like, I don't just. Like, I'll just cook it. And like, it's okay, I don't need anything. But back to the dinner table, and so...
People are back to that now.
Yes, they're back to cooking together. I think there will be more hosting when everything changes. But I would love to think that people will say, all right, even though I've spent a lot of time with my kids over these past few months, those times are so precious. And even if it can be frustrating every once in a while, we want to hold on to it. And I think that children... And again, I don't have any, but children will really latch onto the fact that they will have been able to experience more time with their parents.
Yes.
And that's a really positive thing.
I believe so as well.
They're loved, and they're with each other, and then then they have their friends on Instagram, whatever, or TikTok. But that's something that I hope will stay.
So you have zillions of friends in the restaurant world.
I'm very fortunate. Yes.
All the chefs and everything else. You write about it. You talk about it. You do radio programs on it. What is your view of the future of restaurant in the U.S. and the different reinvention of the positioning of restaurant in general?
Well,
if any, maybe you think it's going to go back to the same.
No, definitely. I don't think it will. I'm a little. I have moments of terror because I know what small margins restaurants work on.
That's right.
And all of those wineries that supply restaurants, generally, there's an issue there as well.
Yes.
Like this is a whole ecosystem that has changed considerably. Those restaurants that are in places like Napa Valley, Sonoma Valley, other tourist destinations that also service their own communities, they're having a difficult time. And my sincere hope is that they will be able to open up fully, that things will come back before serious damage is done. On a macrocosm respects, I think that the celebrity chef thing is sort of drifting away.
Is.
I believe so. And I don't mean that I don't like the Tom Colicchio's of the world, because I do. And I think those kinds of individuals, that's a wrong expression, but those people who have been figureheads, they've worked really hard, like the Jose Andres, to support the community. So I think that this is a role that has developed for them, and that they said, all right, like we're standing up for everybody who was part of our world before this happened, and we want to continue. But I don't think it'll be as pedestal as it would have been before. I'd like to see that, or I would hope for that, because they're people, and they have restaurant staff who are their family, and they've all seen people go without or needed to support them. So that's my sincere hope. And
do you feel we're going to have as much fine dining as we used to, or is the world going to become a little more casual and family style?
I think this change happened about a year ago, or started maybe even 2 years ago.
I see.
And I believe that the Benus, the French Laundry, and others, unfortunately, that we've lost in the Valley, they will continue at the upper echelon. And in upper echelon, I mean they will continue with the best food and the best service, and they will have the most exciting wine lists, and it will be a sense of place. But on a Tuesday night, people don't do that unless they're celebrating something.
That's it.
Generally speaking. So I think that there will be more of a more casual, that they will rise. We also have a difference in how much it costs here. I know in San Francisco, and you probably feel this the same way in Napa, it's expensive to live. You have
That's
to pay your
right.
team a lot in order to keep them.
That's
And
right.
if you can't with the margins, you have to go back to a more casual style.
That's it.
Casual and delicious, casual and healthful, but less of the table service and more of the...
That's what we keep hearing is maybe that more casual evolution. Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, you've done
I should have asked
travels
you that. I should have asked you that question.
all around the world. So what is your favorite place to go? As we tasting again, and you need to tell me what you think of this. Sustainable, organic,
I'm very excited about it.
Chardonnay, Sonoma Coast, Evoluna, the evolution of the moon.
Evoluna.
Would you want to go to the moon? My lovely wife does not understand why my dream is to go to space. She says it's crazy.
The space is different than the moon, though.
Yes.
No,
I
I
want to
go
to the
Virgin
moon.
Galactic.
Yes.
That sounds like
I
a
will
lot
do
of fun.
that too.
I think that sounds a lot of fun.
I want to do them all.
Yeah, totally.
Moon, Mars, everything.
Yeah.
Are you attracted by space in general? Or
My
you like the Earth?
my husband loves sci-fi.
Yeah.
And I guess I like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that like we're the only beings on Earth, and the sort of the esoteric comments that people
Yes.
make. I'm like, you know what? Fine. You believe that? That's good. I think we should all be able to believe what's positive in our world and beyond. I think that that's fine. But I don't know that.
You think there's other lives?
Sure.
For sure.
Why not? Right? Why not?
I'm asking Botticelli, do you think so?
And these beautiful women and this
Yes.
beautiful artwork and this beautiful world and
There's another world for sure.
you asked where I love to travel and where I like to travel, and I think that we're always finding new places, new exciting destinations, even though I love the ones that we've been to before. Like, I love Florence, and we have a friend with a place in Lucca, and we will definitely go to Lucca soon.
So Italy is a great place for you.
Italy's a great place,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I love the excitement of going places like Peru and Machu Picchu and eating some gorgeous meals at Aceria di Gaston in Lima, or going down to Francis Mallman's place, in Argentina, and being able to taste the cultural foods of those areas, or just some. I was going to say stupid, but that's unfair. Just some innocuous stall at a market in Uruguay where you're like, sure, I'll eat every single piece of the cow, is it? Like, I don't know, but it's great. And last time we were there was Black River caviar, and then there was all this great meat, and we're behind the churrascaria.
Culture is food, right?
It's gorgeous.
And knowing civilization and different cultures is food. So what, to all our friends, as people start to travel again,
Yes.
where would you recommend to travel? As one of the most amazing, because you've had
I've had very fortunate
a
experience.
show, Dine Out, of course, Dine Around, but you've done shows all around
We have.
on food and culture and exceptional things around the world. So what's your...
I think there are a couple of different travel concepts. There's like the bucket list travel, which I was never really a fan of before I started doing bucket list kind of items. And then I was like, wait a minute, I climbed Huayna Picchu and Machu Picchu.
You did?
You could say that's bucket list. It was
Wow,
awesome.
for sure.
At like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was out of breath, and I'm sweating like crazy, and I get to the top, I'm like, I did that.
Good for you.
Like, that's cool. Or,
Did you feel the energy?
oh my God, I felt the energy.
It's insane. Huh?
And we were...
It's one of the highest energistic point on the planet.
It's
The
incredible.
reason why we all attracted and polarized by it, right?
And I think sometimes we as individuals will see a monument that people talk about, and we're like, it's not so big.
Yeah.
But like Machu Picchu is the Niagara Falls, like, of my adulthood. When I was a kid, I grew up in Niagara. We would go to the falls.
It's not in France, Niagara Falls.
Absolutely, yes.
I just got to tease those Canadians.
Yeah.
We pull it back to Europe. But it's true. It's exactly the same feeling.
It is. You're drawn to it, and you get there, and you're sitting on top of Huayna Picchu, which overlooks Machu Picchu. And you really say to yourself, okay, I'm a very fortunate person. I really get this. And then there were students from Peru on our trip who were there at Machu Picchu, and our guide explained to us that this is one of the places that they go as children. And it's a really special experience because not everybody can get there.
That's right.
And it's the feeling grateful for that too.
Yeah.
It's the feeling grateful for being
Well
able
said.
to... Thank you.
No, so South
that's-
America, big
yes,
deal.
Big deal. Yeah.
Where else would you recommend people to find maybe an experience which is your forte, to identify food, uniqueness, culture, wine, the whole ensemble?
So I usually look to something like the Relais and Chateau or the Belmont or some group with smaller properties.
Homeless shelters kind.
Homeless shelter, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But they have these properties that are really bespoke.
Yeah, of course.
And if you're going somewhere, it sounds like I'm totally a feat. You don't have to say at a place like that. I promise you. But there are great deals.
But they're amazing.
They're amazing.
Which country do you think is the most exciting right now to go to?
I think where I would go next, I mentioned Italy. What would be exciting is to go to Uruguay and to do the Galapagos Islands. That's something that's been... I just said Uruguay, and it's not Uruguay.
Further south.
I see. I'm such an expert on food wine and travel, I can't even get the country right. But
well, that's okay. We roughly knew where
meats on one side of the coast, fish on the other side of the coast. Yeah. But I would do like a Silver Seas cruise. Yeah. They have this brand new ship, which is the Explorer. I think it's the Explorer. Anyway, they have this brand new ship, which is really cool. And you go to the islands and you have a guide, and it's very small. There are only 100 people on board. And I would do that, definitely. But you don't have to do the sort of, bobble around. You can do something like go on a biking tour. And there are these great organizations that do that if you're super fit and you like to eat a really delicious meal at a Guide Michelin 2-3-star restaurant, and then the next day you bike most of the day, and then you shower, of course, and you stay in a beautiful place, and then you go and have another big meal, and in your mind you're like, well, I can afford this because I've just done all of this exercise. And you can do that through the south of France,
and people are fascinated with those things. So we got to listen to your show more.
Okay. Yes,
and you're going to be back.
And follow me, absolutely.
Always.
Yes.
So now, do you believe in destiny?
I think so, yes.
So you're going to have to finish that little, I know it's not too hard for you. So now, have you played tarot cards ever?
I have played tarot cards. I have.
Look at that. This is a wine named Tarot.
That's beautiful.
Napa Valley.
Okay.
26 cards, 26 arcana, and this is one that really represents a very unique card as far as where you see the future.
Reading.
Where do you see your future? How do you see the next great thing you're going to do?
That's a really difficult
Or maybe what's your dream?
Well, I have a lot of dreams. I have a lot of dreams, and I have
Are you willing to share some?
Yes, of course. And I'm just trying to think of what the next big hope is, because we're all so focused on the sort of the excitement that will happen when we sort of roll into something new.
Yes.
But I really believe in being able to get out and travel more. And I think what I'll probably do is write more for Afar magazine and a few other magazines and do some of these experiential trips, which is what the next big thing is. So it's not simply going on the Four Seasons private jet and going around the world, which would totally be a bucket list item. Yeah. But it's choosing a number of destinations and having that experience, whether it's on a boat or a small ship or being on just like a river boat in France or something like that. So you can stop and stay and eat and enjoy and be a part of that. So I think my dreams have to do with continuing to have a good time and a thoughtful time and hopefully doing more good in the world. Because we all try to do good. You're doing a big part to it. Thank you. That's what I love. And you love Napa Valley, so we had to... I love Napa Valley. To continue and finalize our fabulous time together with Napa Valley. What attracted you to Napa so much since day one? Because we've had great times together here in Napa. I think it was my very first experience was a Trevigny restaurant. I was visiting here, and I ate far too much. And the person who was the busboy at the time had to drive the car to the El Bonita Inn for us. Well, which is not far, it's almost across the street. True, but I was fortunate enough to understand the concept that I was like, oh, no more. And then I was like, all right, I'm just going to take a cab home because this is just not going to happen. And they were very kind. So what attracted me to the Napa Valley really was all of the stories that I heard as a child. And I know that Falcon Crest doesn't exist, but we would watch that television show when I was little, and we would dream of, the Napa Valley. And then we would meet vintners, or in the Canadian stores, we would see different bottles on the shelves, the Robert Mondavi Winery or the Charles Krug Winery, and things that would come to Canada, and then the support that was given. Yes. And a lot of these really good families would do things in other regions. And so we had this, we had a music festival that was supported by one of the families here in Toronto, and those sorts of things. So I always had this affinity. And then because of Mr. Burns, I was actually able to come one time and have this fabulous dinner. And I was, well, I won't even tell you how old I was, but I was wearing borrowed cufflinks at the time because I bought a French cuff shirt not knowing. And I was like, okay.
A lot of style. Man of style.
So at the table was Chef Thomas Keller. The owner of Wynn was there. There were winemakers, and I didn't know who any of these people were, which is the best thing for me ever, because I was like, whatever this, whatever that, crawling under the table when I dropped my fork. I'm like, it was super gauche. But at that meal, Mr. Mondavi, Robert Mondavi, was very kind to me, and so was his wife, Margaret. And it was the first experience I had of being welcomed here. And that experience has happened many times. We are at Catherine and Craig Hall's opening, and a colleague of mine who's a writer, she showed up early. She had her young son and his friend with her, and she was like, I'm only going to stay a second because, you know, I know this is a fancy event, but I didn't have any childcare. And Catherine Hall said, please stay. Yeah. Don't worry about it. And the kids were running around, and she's like, it's outside, it's okay. And in my mind, I was like, this is the welcoming spirit that I've seen over and over and over again from people with big wineries and small wineries from all over the place. And it's just this like, okay, like we're hospitality. And I love that. Burger contests and watering the vines.
What's the most fun memory you've had here in Napa Valley? The most exciting thing you've lived? Or the most wild things? We drink it. By the way, as I asked that question, what do you think of this wine? How would you describe it?
There is a dark fruit on the under palate that is, I think, works with the Napa Valley concept. There is a denseness to it. It is delicious in a way that it has the round palate feel, and there's a velvetyness to it. And I think that this wine would actually age quite well for decades, and it would change over time.
Absolutely.
And I think when we look back at things, we'll say, you know, today is this what we did, and we talked about red lips and gorgeous things in the Napa Valley. But in 20 years from now, or 25 or 30 years from now, we'll remember that time when there weren't any people on the streets of Yountville, and you had those little moments of soon, not today, but soon. And I love that. It's a sense of place.
Yeah, I fully agree. So I
had a lot of really weird and wonderful moments. So I had a great moment at a restaurant here in Yountville called Ciccio.
Yeah.
I picked up Mrs. Mondavi. I picked up Margaret at her house, and we were going to go for pizza. So we drove over to Ciccio, which does not take reservations. And I was a little nervous because she's not one to stand around at the door. Let's be clear. So we walked in, and the owner of the restaurant smiled and said, "Oh, Margaret, welcome. It's so nice to see you." And I was a little like, "Oh no, what's going to happen?" And he said, "We heard you were coming, but Francis took your table." Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah.
So 2 minutes later, we sit at another table, like a hot second, absolutely. The Chapelets are in one corner, and then the people who own Valentine Huneeus. Not Huneeus. The people who own the grapeseed oil company. Valentine.
Yeah.
Lovely man. They were at another table, and Margaret pulls out this bottle of 1976 Robert Mondavi wine, and she opens it up, and there were all these like looks from around the room, and it just turned into a party. People were chatting with each other, and it was only one bottle of wine, but like there were tastes, and you know, Molly, the Chapelets were like, hey, and anyway, it was just, I felt really like I was in the know, and it was just lovely, absolutely lovely,
and that's what Napa Valley is all about.
Totally Napa Valley, absolutely, and I love those moments. I did have a random experience at the Robert Mondavi winery shortly after Mr. Mondavi sadly had passed away, and I arrived with Margaret, and there was a Latin band playing, and it was gorgeous and fun, and then we did a sort of a lap around, and I put her back, didn't put her, but I walked her to her car, and she got in her car with her little dog, and we said goodbye, all was good, and about 3 minutes later, my cell phone rang, and one of the people who were at the party said, everybody thinks you're Mrs. Mondavi's Chippy. And I was like, what? And he's like, well, you know, not the people who live here, but they're like all of these visitors. And they're like, who is she with? Is that her grandson? No, it's not. oh my God. And I'm like,
And we've all thought that for a while.
yes. I'm sorry, but that was, I mean.
That's a funny story.
It was, yeah. Joel Peterson once went around a room. The Joel Peterson who formerly owned Ravenswood Winery
That's right.
and now has Winston Futures. Lovely man.
Yes.
He got bored at an event and started asking people if they knew me at the other side of the room. So people thought I was somebody other than I was. And they're all like, oh, it's so nice. We've heard so much about you. And Zalma Long was sitting at the table. And she's like, she's a fabulous winemaker. And Zalma looks, she's like, Joel, like I'm like, yeah. She's like, why are people talking about you? I'm like, I have no idea. And
two personalities.
Peterson was like, this is hilarious. I'm like, no, I'm the other Joel. But it is a fascinating city.
Yeah.
And whether city, town, area, region.
Yeah, that's
whether
so
it's
small.
You know, at the gorgeous auction Napa Valley or something that's smaller and more intimate and yet still very, very important. V Foundation. There are all of these events that come up and support the different causes and there's generosity here, and I see that every day. Whether it's me getting thrown in a pool or whatever. At the Bartizono Hotel, I was convinced that I knew somebody, and I'm sitting at the pool, lying there in my bathing suit, and it's over a Festival Napa Valley weekend, and blah blah blah. I'm like, I know him, and my husband's like, don't do it. Just don't do it. I'm like, come on, I totally know that person. He's like, don't say hi, you don't know that person. Turns out he was an underwear model for Calvin Klein, and I did not know
knew him. You see, relationship can go far, and
I said hi. I was like,
can be hidden sometimes.
I'm like, I don't know.
You really got to look deep.
I don't know. I think this is. We have to take that leap.
Yeah. That's right.
And even if you embarrass yourself, you're not really embarrassing yourself because you're the only one who gets embarrassed.
That's
so
it.
Why the heck?
So now, Joel, you've done so many great things.
Thank you.
You're working on many new projects. Is there one you want to share, just without telling us too much, but something that is coming up so as everybody will follow you now, if they're not already, now they're going to follow you for your next thing.
So I'm working with a couple of media outlets on a concept that I have that I hope continues this next evolution of being part of this food, wine, and travel movement. I think that...
I bet you it's going to be pretty sexy.
I think we all need that, that sort of the indication of the next now. And even though I am not the next now, showing that, being able to say, hey, what about, or you can do, or, and then the little stories that come up with it. It's like the, bribing the people at the Uffizi to get in early. You're like, look, I spent how many thousands of dollars getting here? What's another 50 euros?
Yeah.
Like, let's do this, right? Let's do the travel hacks. Let's do the travel fun. Let's enjoy it. Or when your luggage gets lost, don't say, oh my gosh, my luggage is lost. You
go to the shop and buy some clothes.
Buy some clothes because we've got to...
Hey, look at this wardrobe. He got it all at Senses next door. He came naked.
I did, yes.
No, he came in an underwear like the model at Barcelona. But tell us, so when is it going to be launching? Soon?
It's on the way. So it's something that we're really working hard on. And that's
very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. And so I'm looking to that. And it's another way to express myself and bring what we get to do in and really highlight and showcase what's going on around the world. And that's the delicious part, I think.
Yes.
We all want to travel. We all want to see new things. And even though travel doesn't necessarily have to mean like going overseas, although that's fun, but it can mean coming to the Napa Valley.
And so much in the US to see.
Oh my gosh. And there are so many places that we don't think of as often as we should. And you say, what about Austin? It's an amazing place. You can find things to do in Iowa. You can find things to do in places.
And as you said, just from your car from San Francisco, there's so much to see all around.
Yeah.
Even for the weekend.
Yeah.
So now, what would be a message you want to send to all the people that are listening and with us today? Because what a personality. We're so lucky that we finally captured him to come to Yountville in person, which is a big deal. I really want to raise my glass to that. Thank you for coming in person.
Thank you.
And you're so much full of phenomenal ideas. You're so vibrant on the radio, on the podcast, on TV, on all the things you do.
Well, and you're amazing too.
I'm learning.
You're
I'm learning.
amazing, Mr.
We've had the pleasure to meet
Yes.
a few years ago now.
Can I tell the story?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I was with Mr. Burns. We were on our way to an event, blah, blah, blah. Life was good. Life was fun. I walk into Deloche Winery, and there is a handsome gentleman in his underwear stomping grapes. And I was like...
Was that with Dan Aykroyd?
You were with
day?
Dan Aykroyd, yeah.
That's right.
Dan Aykroyd was wearing a t-shirt, which is fine. And he was stomping grapes alongside.
Well, he was hiding his stomach, but he was naked under, just for the true story. And I was showing my stomach and wearing a swimming suit.
You were wearing a suit.
A silk boxer short.
It was great. It was absolutely great, and that was the beginning of a very hilarious day at lunch. It was lovely. And then, like 2 days later, I was driving down Sacramento Street, honked my horn wildly, pulled over, jumped out to say hi, and I think I scared you. You were just like, I'm like, Joelle, and you're like, oh my gosh, Joelle, it's so nice to see you. And it was great because that your personality came through in a way that your wines bring forward as well. It's a delight. It's exciting. It's whispered about. Like it's that.
Thank you.
It's great, and it's really. And it's good as well.
And dear friends, we've been friends for over 15 years.
Was that 15 years ago?
Yeah, it was 15 years ago, and we recently talked to Dan, and he's doing great.
Oh, good.
And his beautiful vodka is doing well. He still has a big wine cellar, so
He's
a great, phenomenal. Didn't we have fun? with
We
it?
had a great time. We had so much fun. It was a good
Hey
lunch.
Dan,
Yes.
maybe
Hi, Dan.
we'll send him a resume of our wonderful interview together.
We could do that, or we could just drink some of his wonderful vodka.
That's it.
The next time, we'll invite him over too.
For sure. So Joel, share
sorry.
a big message to everyone, because
I
you have so much to advise as well.
I think I have been very, very fortunate to meet some interesting people over the years, and oftentimes it's a coincidence. I'm at the right table at the right time, and you have to take advantage of it. And I mean that in the most positive way. You have to say thank you to those people who invited you. You have to say nice to meet you to those people that you enjoyed your time with. Write them a note. Make those little things. Send them a photograph of the night or whatever. And I think that will tie you going forward. And it's truly, it's oftentimes why I've been able to do certain things.
Yes.
I've been able to organize charity trips to Italy, not because I'm me, because I'm not, but because
Well, look at you are you.
well, no. But you establish. I think it's about establishing relationships, and I think that building over time will really help each and every one of us. And don't dismiss anybody. You never know who anybody is. One day I was doing dinner at. We did a fundraising event for the James Beard Foundation at Le Toque Restaurant.
Yeah.
Somebody showed up with an extra person. Wasn't willing to pay $10,000 for the tasting. I became the waiter. And so I poured wine, and it was good, and it was fun, and I love Ken Frank, and I love the fact that he donated all sorts of time and money and food. Like, he's a sensational human. But you never know who's standing behind you. And so I think that we all need to treat one another that way, whether it's the person who is working so hard in our vineyard, or who has flown in because they're doing a stage at a restaurant. You never know who anybody is. So we should all treat one another with respect. And it shows, and it works, and it helps. And I sound like a freaking advertisement for Hallmark, but I really believe it, because we treat one another well, and then others will treat each other well. So maybe that's my big message. Be good to one another.
Dear friends, wise and wild, Joel Riddell.